Welcome to Happily Ever After, the podcast where we talk about life's big stories, from breakups and breakdowns to icky secrets and happy endings. It's the stuff that makes us human. I'm your host, Hannah Harvey. I'm a writer and a parenting blogger at mumsdays.com. I'd be really grateful if you could subscribe and leave a review because it basically means more people can find the podcast. And I also absolutely love hearing from you, so please do contact me through Instagram at mumsdays, MUMSDAYS, with any of your stories and any thoughts you might have on the episode or any questions. You can find all the details from this episode in the show notes. Hello and welcome to Happily Ever After. It's me, Hannah, and today I wanted to talk about happiness, because I was recently invited on my local radio to talk about my thoughts on happiness for International Happiness Day, which happened to be my birthday and the spring equinox. So I did a little bit of research and then came up with loads of lovely things and tools and tricks and got to talk about exactly 3 seconds worth of what I'd come up with. So I was like, I'm going to share this on a podcast then. So I think it's like a weird goal. You know, people often say, I just want to be happy. And I think as humans, we are built with so many different emotions. It's hard to actually just be happy all the time because we just aren't made up like that. Often when I think about my own pop psychology, it comes from the film Inside Out. And if you look at, you know, what's inside your brain, we've got, as soon as you're born, you've got sadness and happiness. So both of these things are necessary to function. And then obviously there's anger and there's disgust and fear. And they're obviously all there for a reason. And we're going to feel all of these things probably most days. So, but what can we do to tip the balance to get into feeling happier, I guess? Because you can go through days where you just do not feel happy at all. So, yes, we are built for all these different emotions, but how can we get to a place where we're feeling happier, especially when you've been through something traumatic? Or, you know, for me, going through divorce and all that kind of stuff that I didn't necessarily want to happen, how can you get to a place where you feel happy about what's happened? So I'd say firstly, being able to manage stress has been absolutely huge for getting to a place where I feel happier. So many of you will know, if you've listened to the podcast for a while, that I got heavily into yoga, and I'm now a yoga teacher because it's been so incredibly beneficial for me. Just being able to get out of that bit of your brain where you're in fight or flight is really important, and using techniques to get back in your body and slow everything down. So using breathing techniques and using yoga, just to get yourself away from the back of the brain where everybody's like, you know, that's where we panic. And also doing things like accepting where you are right now. I was talking to Penny a few weeks ago about, you know, her process, and instead of kind of judging yourself for where you are and how you're feeling, being more like compassionate about what you've been through and what's going on, and not being so focused on the timeline, like, oh, it's been 3 years, why do I not feel better, or anything like that. Just letting yourself feel what you feel and accepting where you are at this moment in time is really, really helpful for managing stress, because you don't need to put any extra stress on already feeling stressed, if that makes sense. And the other thing I would say is be very careful when you are stressed to not lean on any old bad habits, because that can often make everything worse. So I remember if I was feeling, you know, back in the day when I used to drink, if I was feeling stressed about something, or, you know, any range of emotions, really, I might be like, oh, I can't wait for a drink, that'll make me feel better. But obviously there's a knock-on effect for these things, and noticing if you are doing anything that maybe alleviates how you're feeling in that moment but is bad later on is something to really be careful of, because that is not in the long run going to make you feel better. Okay, so the second thing is, it's kind of an obvious one, but to actually do things you enjoy. Like, are you allowing yourself that time to do stuff not because you have to, but because you want to? There's loads of things that we do out of duty and we think we should like, which is all well and good, but what do you actually love? Like, what are the things that you do just for yourself, just for the sake of it? I remember reading a book by Daisy Buchanan called Burn Before Reading, and it's all about this idea of just allowing yourself to read a book because you want to, not because it's for your job or because you want to be smart or because it's the latest book or whatever, but actually just reading a bunch of books because you want to. And I love that idea because I was like, God, I never do that. And then also things like, what are your hobbies? You know, what are you doing just for the sake of it? Because in finding these hobbies that are for you, that's when you'll find connection with other people. It's when you'll find community. And obviously all of those things then tap back into your happiness levels because you've spent time doing things that you really love with people that you really love. So simple, obvious, but are you actually giving yourself permission to do what you enjoy doing? The third thing is working on ways to boost your self-esteem, which it's a bit of a weird one because it's like it's inbuilt within us. It's kind of the network within our bodies and our brains that we've developed over the years. And it's the way we speak to ourselves. So, you know, we might not even notice that we're doing it because it's just part of who we are and what feels normal. But are you actually speaking to yourself in a way that's pretty horrible? I still do this on a regular basis, even though I've been working on it for a long time. Like, I was looking at some stats this morning and immediately got into a place where I was like, that isn't as high as it should be. Like, this isn't working the way that I thought it would, and being down on myself, being like, I'm not working hard enough, obviously, or, you know, very quickly went into that space and I hadn't even noticed. It wasn't until I saw my boyfriend and he was like, what's going on with you? You seem to have got out of bed in quite a negative headspace. And I was like, oh yeah, it's because I'm beating myself up already. So it's working on this kind of compassion for yourself and what you've been through that is going to help with self-esteem. Like, how would you speak to one of your children? How would you speak to one of your friends if they were in the same situation? Can you imagine that there's like a little person within you, like a little Hannah or a little, you know, whatever your name is, how would you speak to yourself if you were a child? And working on doing that instead of always immediately beating ourselves up. And this might not come naturally because we were brought up in a society which is post-war, and a lot of our families have had to go through some pretty tough times. We're used to that kind of stiff upper lip. So it can be quite unnatural to have some compassion when you're like, look at all the other people around us and how they're suffering. So if you find that you can't do it because you're like, this is utterly ridiculous, try doing something which I found really helpful, which is, I guess it's like based on manifesting. So the idea of imagining what you want as if it's already happened. And you don't have to believe as such that it's going to work, but it helps it helps to trick your brain. So what I do personally is write down, for example, it might be in this case to do with happiness. You can write down things as if they've already happened that would make you feel happy. So I'm so happy and grateful that I've got enough food. Like, yeah, I do. But anything that you would make you feel gratitude without making you feel guilty, I guess, and ways to be kind to yourself. I just find that a really helpful tool. I'm so happy and grateful that my children are happy and safe. I feel like I have enough time. That's a big thing for me, is feeling like I'm running out of time. So focusing on, I do have enough time and I have space to take my time with the things that I want to work on. All of those help to lead to boosting self-esteem. The next thing to look at, I would say, is your lifestyle. So trying to make this, it's kind of a boring one, and I guess it can feel like a should do, but working on being healthy has such a humongous benefit to the way our brains are wired and happiness levels, that it's, really quite crucial. Like, how do you look after a plant? How do you look after your children? It's looking at it as a way to nurture yourself rather than doing it for a punishment. Like, oh, I ate too much cake at the weekend, so I'm going to make sure that I'm healthy this week. But actually doing it in the way that you would for a loved one. So, things for me that I try and focus on the process. So it's, what do I need to do on a daily basis that will make, in the long run, help boost my self-esteem, for one, tap into the things that I enjoy, help manage my stress. And for me, these are making sure I move every day. So I try and do my 10,000 steps. And as a process, that gets me out into nature, which is really incredible for managing anxiety. Trying to get enough sleep is like huge for mood. Apparently, women only produce the hormones they need when they're asleep. So if we don't get enough sleep, we haven't got the right balance of hormones. Like, they can't be replenished when we're awake. So getting 8 to 10 hours sleep in general has a huge knock-on effect in terms of how we feel the next day. And then the other thing is as simple as just making sure you drink enough water. So I've been advised 2 to 3 liters, but depends where you're starting from, but just trying to get plenty of water into you rather than just living on coffee and caffeine and all the other sugary things that we might have will have a big impact on how you feel, because it's what your body needs. And then you can start to, once you're getting the basis there, you can then start to tap into what else do you personally need to feel healthy and start to add them in. And one of them, it might be, what do you not need in order to be healthy? Like for me, I need to not go on social media at night, for example, for me to feel healthy. And I also felt like I needed to quit alcohol. And I know lots of people who are finding, especially as they get older, that drinking is having a massively negative impact on their stress and anxiety levels the following week after having a big night out. So you might want to just notice how you feel after things like that and decide if it's something that you want to play around with doing less of. Another great booster for happiness levels is to talk about the thing that you don't want to talk about. So there might be certain things that you feel a lot of shame around, or that you're just not proud of, or it could have been hugely traumatic and it's still living in your brain as a trauma. Getting to speak to a professional about these things can have a massive impact on helping your brain to process it so you can move on and it's no longer becomes something that you think about. And yeah, talking about stuff that is troubling you helps gain back your power and kind of reduce any isolation that you might be feeling around that thing. And it also allows the people around you to support you. So speaking to friends, people want to help each other. So reaching out and saying, I've got this thing that I need to be vulnerable about is a huge bonding experience, and you'll it'll boost your self-esteem. So it goes back to that whole idea of you being compassionate. You're admitting this thing, which once you've shone a torch on it, it's suddenly like, oh, I don't know why I was so upset about that, potentially. And just boost connection with the people around you. So it's like a really, really lovely tool. And then I would say the other thing is working on kind of building resilience. So someone told me recently that every time you do something you don't want to do, it makes the bit of your brain bigger. I can't remember which bit, so this isn't the greatest example. But it's this idea that every time you do something you don't want to do, even though you know it's good for you, that's building your resilience. Doing challenging things, doing artistic things, anything that puts you out of your comfort zone. You know, the other day I was like, I hadn't been to the gym for a week because I'd been poorly, and then getting back into the gym was like really hard. I didn't know how to get there. So when I finally was like, no, I'm going to go now, even though I'm still not quite feeling better, I then felt so much better for the rest of the day, knowing that I'd done that thing that I didn't want to do, because you never regret a workout, do you? So yeah, just doing things that get you out of your comfort zone and challenge yourself is a really good one. A few years ago, oh God, it's like 9 years ago now, but a friend reminded me of this recently. I did a challenge with my then 2-year-old son, who is now nearly 12. And I decided we were going to go and visit every castle in Northumberland because there were so many of them. But it was a way of helping me get out the house more, because I was struggling with just the day-to-day life of having a toddler. So giving myself that challenge meant that we actually had something to go out for. And I love ticking things off. So it's like work within your own, the things that you know motivate you, try and create a challenge out of that. And then you've got something to look back on and be proud of because you've ticked off something. That's how my brain works anyway. And then another thing is, you know, turning whatever your negative experiences are into positives. Like, how can you use what you've learned to help other people? It might be in going to groups. It might be in, you know, helping a charity. It could be through writing. It could be through art and music. You know, for me, I decided I'm just going to sit down and start a podcast and talk to people. And now I don't even know what episode we're on. We're on nearly 80 or something. And I can look back and go, wow, I can't believe that I've managed to talk on 80 different things. That's nuts. But it's something that I can be proud of. Occasionally I'll look back and be like, it hasn't got the stats that it needs. But it, you know, overall, you've got this sense of achievement because I've managed to actually sit and do something and just stick with it. And, you know, you might not know what your thing is, but I would say if you've got an urge to do anything and you don't, you know, you might not know why, but just sit down and go for it anyway. Or not sit down. Like for me last year, it was getting in the sea. I didn't know why I wanted to get in the sea, but I just knew I did. So I did it every day for 21 weeks. And I learned a lot of lessons by doing that. And there's also that sense of achievement of, not that it matters for anybody else, but for me, I know that I did it and it was quite fun and it gave me a sense of purpose for a while. So yeah. And one final thing just to think about is if you stop doing something, you decide you don't want to do something again, be very mindful to fill that space that you've created with things that you love, and not them being like, oh, I've got all this time, and filling it with negative things that don't make you feel good. So yeah, and as they say, we regret the things we didn't do, not necessarily the things we did do. So talk about the things you have done that maybe you regret, and start doing some of the things that you really, really want to achieve. And that will boost your happiness. But then don't forget as well, the other thing about happiness is there is such a thing as overjoy. So if you've ever drunk too much, taken drugs, gone out with the wrong person who maybe makes you feel amazing one day and then terrible the next, you'll know that when, as the pendulum swings, if you go too far, you also have to come back the other way. So just being careful we're looking for like a happy medium, somewhere in between where you can live in peace, as opposed to like crazy happiness followed by crazy lows. I would say that is the biggest thing I've learned probably from my divorce, is that I no longer want to chase those massive highs. I want to live in a state of peace and calm and like a quiet contentment rather than, crazy highs and lows, because it's too much. My nervous system can't take it anymore. So that's my thoughts on happiness. If you've got anything that you'd like to say on the subject, I'd love to hear about it, because I imagine it just changes, I think, as you get older, and I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks, bye. All right then, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Happily Ever After with me, Hannah Harvey. It would be wonderful if you could leave a review and subscribe. And of course, if you have a friend who might enjoy this episode, please do pass it on. For anything else, you can get in touch with me either through Instagram @mumsdays or my website mumsdays.com.